Hi, we're going to look at graphs of inequalities now that we've been solving them. And hopefully, as we go through this, it'll make sense to you how to do this. I just want to give you an opportunity to pick up points using Edpuzzle. So the first question is, which numbers have an absolute value of 5? What numbers are 5 away from 0? The answer is 5 and -5, because you're basically looking at the distance between them and 0. And this is how you graph it. So it's just 2 points. All right, so now if we want to do this one next, we're looking at this and we're asking ourselves what numbers have an absolute value greater than 5. So list at least 4 numbers that you can think of that have an absolute value greater than 5. Now my guess is when you answered that, you said numbers like 6, maybe 6.5, 7, 7.5, 8. Okay, so all of those are greater than 5 away from 0. But the question is, are there numbers on the other end? So for instance, what about -6? Oops. What about -7? What about -8? So all of these are also more than 5 away. In fact, so is 5.5, 5.7, or -5.75, -5.25. So really it's all of these is what you're looking for. So when you solve this, what you do is you break it down. So you imagine that you're splitting absolute value of x is greater than 5 into 2 parts. Oh, let me just block this out so we have a little bit of room to work. Okay, so imagine that you are breaking open these bars and you're writing x is greater than or equal to 5. And then you're going to also write x is less than or equal to -5. So this is kind of a new idea. Not only are you going to do the positive and the negative, you're also going to flip Fred. So this is what's going to make it so that you end up graphing x is greater than 5. So let's do that. And that takes care of all these polka dots this direction. And then this is x is less than or equal to -5. And we still have dots on the ends of this right at 5 and -5. This is cartoonishly huge. But hopefully this sticks in your mind. Hopefully not like in a nightmare. But all of these numbers on both sides are going to have absolute values greater than 5 because every number is further away. All right, so that's how that would look. The next example we're going to look at has something that we have to undo first before we can graph it. So we're going to use some of our undoing tricks, bring in our t-chart. And how do you undo a +2? That's right, you subtract it. So you're going to subtract 2 from both sides. So your goal is to isolate that absolute value. So now you're left with the absolute value is greater than or equal to, and what is 5 minus 2? Yep, it's 3. And then we're going to split that up into 2 problems. Oops, I want the arrow that we can graph. So now this is going to become, my pen's a little bit big. X is greater than or equal to 3. I'm going to put an or in there because actually x can't do both these things at the same time. X is less than or equal to -3. So notice I put a negative in and a positive in, but I also flipped Fred. And then your last point is to graph it. So I need a dot at 3. And because Fred has a mustache, this is going to be, is it going to be hollow or it's going to be solid? The correct answer is it's going to be solid. So we're going to put a solid dot at 3. And where else are we going to put a solid dot? That's right, -3. So I'll put that right there. And then we're looking for values that x is larger than 3. So when I shade this, am I going to shade to the left or to the right? The correct answer is to the right. And then this says x is less than or equal to -3. So I'm going to shade to the left or the right? To the left. There you go. And again, those are solid dots. So that's what that graph looks like. All right, so let's take a look at another one. What numbers have an absolute value that's less than 5? So give me some numbers. Give me 4 numbers that have an absolute value less than 5. Okay, hopefully you went with numbers like 0. That has an absolute value less than 5. 1, 2, and then remember the same thing. Don't forget your negatives as well. So basically, we have an infinite number of them. Maybe we have 1.5. Maybe we have 0.5, 1.75, maybe 3.5. The point is that there's some positive and some negatives in there. And what we don't want is to miss any. So we are going to break that down algebraically. And we are going to say, oh, that's gigantic. Let's go a little smaller with that. We're breaking open the absolute values and we're saying x is less than or equal to 5. And x is, we're going to flip Fred, greater than or equal to what? The correct answer is -5. All right, so are we going to have hollow or solid dots? The answer is we're going to have solid dots, and that's because it says Fred has a mustache. It says equal to, and where are we going to put those dots? That's right, we're going to put them at 5. Oh, that's a square. We're going to put them at 5. I don't know who decided if it'd be squares or dots. I haven't been around that long. And we're going to put it at -5. And then we already have an indication of where we're going to shade because we already started doing that. We're going to shade from -5 to +5 because we want values that are less than 5 but greater than -5. Maybe I can make that a little thinner. All right, and that's what that graph looks like. And honestly, then you don't need all these polka dots anymore because we've basically said everything in between. So I'll pull those, I'll pull those out of there. It's a little math party going on outside. Actually, it's not a math party. Our roof is being replaced. So if you hear all that banging and clunking, that's what that's about. All right, so that's the correct graph and it ends, whereas this one has arrows going off in both directions. This one just ends. So we call this an interval. All right. Okay, and then here's another one for us to try. Before we go any further, what do we have to get rid of? What do we have to undo? The correct answer is we need to undo the +1. So how do you undo the plus 1. That's right, you're going to minus 1. We don't need to table that line. We're trying to be gentle with you when you first start out here. 5 minus 1 is what? Is Fred okay with us subtracting 1? That doesn't make him flip, does it? Does Fred flip? No. All right, hopefully you said 4. Now we're going to break this open. Like that and that. And we're going to be left with x is less than 4 or equal to 4. And then what will we write right here? X is, that's right, Fred is going to flip greater than or equal to -4. Where are the dots going to be solid or are they going to be hollow? That's right, they're going to be solid. And then where are the 2 dots going to be? That's right, they're going to be at 4 and -4. And now, moment of truth, where do we shade? So this says x is smaller than 4. So when we shade, are we going to go to the left or the right of 4? The correct answer is to the left. And then here we have x is greater than -4. So if we're starting at -4, are we going to go to the left or the right? The correct answer is right. So actually, they overlap, and we no longer need our arrowheads. So again, this is an interval. And that's our solution.